Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you bring us and really plunge deep. We dig out those fascinating insights, give you that shortcut to being properly informed without, all the noise.
That's us as your guides, yeah. Through whatever stack of material you've got, we highlight the compelling bits, how things connect, and maybe uncover those surprising moments.
Yeah, and today, wow, we are diving headfirst into a world that's, it's anything but ordinary. We're unpacking sources all centered on the savage sword and sorcery realm of Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian.
Which is really a cornerstone of heroic fantasy, isn't it? A world where the stakes are just incredibly high, the action is visceral, and that line between man and monster, or even civilization and savagery, is constantly shifting.
Exactly. And it's not just about, a muscle-bound hero swinging a sword. It's this really rich tapestry. You've got sprawling kingdoms, dark arcane magic, truly ancient horrors, and a protagonist who just defies any easy label. So our mission here in this deep dive is to navigate this wild, ancient age based strictly on the texts you've provided us. We'll shine a light on the key figures, the really thrilling conflicts, and some frankly bizarre encounters that make this world tick.
It's a realm where, honestly, raw wits and cold steel are often the only things standing between you and, oblivion, especially with all the sorcery and these beings that seem older than humanity itself. Get ready to unpack a world just steeped in adventure and constant danger.
Okay, let's start by painting the picture. We need to set the stage for where all this chaos unfolds. Our sources give us a really vivid sense of Conan's world, this time often called the Hyborian Age, and it's placed deliberately, like outside of known human history.
That's so crucial, yeah. The timeline is framed by these immense, almost mythological shifts. The sources tell us it's the age between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the years of the rise of the sons of Aries. That immediately puts it in this distant, sort of pre-cataclysmic past, long before recorded history as we think of it. It's an age of legend, basically. Right after one world died and before ours really got started.
And the description of the world itself is just so evocative. We hear about an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Vast, mysterious.
Beautiful, but also full of peril. Yeah, it tells you straight away this isn't some small, contained little setting.
Not at all.
And the sources don't just generalize, they name a whole load of these kingdoms, sketching out this complex map.
Yeah.
You have the more civilized Hyborian kingdoms, places like Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia. Then there's the mysterious cold land of Hyperborea up north, Zamora, famous for its thieves and dark magic, and way down south, ancient, sinister Stygia, steeped in that dark sorcery around the god set.
And pushing down from the far north, you've got Asgard and Vanaheim, home to those tall, fair, blue-eyed barbarians, the worshippers of Ymir, the frost giant.
Right. And then nestled between those northern lands and the southern civilizations is Cimmeria, Conan's homeland. Stark, rugged.
Described as a land of darkness in the night.
Exactly. But the scope is even wider, know. The stories mention or imply so many other places. Koth, Shem, south of Aquilonia. Aquilonia itself, of course, where Conan eventually becomes king. The big empire of Turan to the east.
Right.
Southern lands like Kush, Argos on the coasts, Vendia. Tribal territories like Afghanistan up in the mountains, even specific cities like Khauran. It's this huge patchwork of cultures, different tech levels, mostly Bronze or Iron Age, but with hints of much older stuff and belief systems, all constantly bumping up against each other, trading, warring.
It sounds like a world just constantly moving, constantly in conflict. And speaking of conflict, the sources are really clear that Conan's origin is tied directly to that environment. He's from Cimmeria, that land of darkness, right on the harsh northern frontier.
Oh, absolutely. Fundamental, yeah. Cimmeria is always described as being at war with its neighbors, especially those Asgardians and Vanaheimir. His youth wasn't spent, learning etiquette. It was forged in that brutal, constant struggle.
Yeah.
The sources even have this detail about him, like involuntarily touching the scars on his face when he thinks back to those times. Shows how deep it runs. It wasn't just survival, it was perpetual war, hardship.
And that upbringing, that brutal start, it creates a very specific kind of person, which leads us straight into Conan's nature, his philosophy. The sources laid it out pretty starkly. He's introduced, first off, as a barbarian, but the labels just keep coming, don't they? Adventurer, warrior, king, outlaw, thief, mercenary. He seems to embody all of these roles at different times in the sources you gave us.
He's like this force of nature moving through all the layers of Hyborian society, but he never really becomes part of it, not like a native would. The sources stress that, while kings might inherit thrones, for Conan, blood was the price of mine.
That's a powerful line.
It is. That crown in Aquilonia wasn't given, it was taken. Violence, struggle, a direct result of who he is, that warrior nature.
And his physical abilities are just, well, legendary in the text. They're not just strong. They're described with this kind of wild vitality.
Yeah, exactly.
We hear about innate vitality, a barbarian's instinct of near peril, like a sixth sense, the steel spring quickness of a wild thing, and just sheer vitality and endurance of the wild.
And the sources give incredible examples to back that up. Feats that seem almost impossible, climbing sheer walls to get into guarded places.
Right.
Navigating in pitch darkness, enduring wounds that would kill anyone else, like recovering from a deep dagger thrust or a blow to the head that cracked bone.
And maybe the most striking one,
Yeah.
surviving crucifixion. The sources describe him left for dead like a dying dog on a cross. It's brutal.
Horrific scene.
The fact that he lives through that, pulls himself off the cross, it just speaks volumes about his refusal to die. His physical toughness pushed to the absolute limit.
It sets him apart immediately from the often more fragile, decadent, civilized characters he meets. Which brings us to his view of civilization itself. It's rarely flattering in these sources, is it?
No, not at all. He sees city dwellers, especially the wealthy, the refined, as weak, soft, often corrupt.
He's often critical, dismissive. He calls the people in Zuthal damned degenerates, and he notes kind of disdainfully that civilized people must have your recompense for everything. Like it's all transactional, maybe greedy compared to the directness he's used to.
To the sophisticated types, he's just this rough, turbulent presence, a rogue who doesn't play by their rules.
And he values practical skills way more. Wits, a good sword, much more than magic or what he calls mummery.
Mummery, yeah.
All those elaborate rituals, formal religions, arcane studies. He thinks they're useless at best, sometimes actively harmful or just fraudulent. His view is grounded in physical reality, immediate results.
And his religious beliefs, perfect reflection of that. Total practicality, disdain for complexity. His faith is all about Crom, his people's god. And it's incredibly simple, stark.
Crom's described as a gloomy, savage god, one who hated weaklings. The core idea, as Conan sees it, is Crom gives you courage when you're born, plus the will and the might to kill your enemies.
Oh, that's it.
Pretty much. As Conan says in one source, that is all any god asks of any man. Or elsewhere, all I ask is the courage to face them and the weapons to cleave them. Simple as that.
He really has no time for the complicated pantheons, like Mitra for the Hyborians, or the sinister gods like Set and Stygia, or even Ymir, the god of his northern enemies.
None. He dismisses the whole idea of an afterlife taught by priests, sees it as bleak, undesirable, just a gray, misty realm of clouds and icy winds to wander cheerlessly throughout eternity.
Cheerful.
Right, and priests themselves, no wiser than leeches. It's just this pragmatic, almost cynical, totally unromantic view of gods and existence.
And this pragmatism, this focus on what's real now, it extends to his loyalties, his motivations. They aren't fixed, are they? They shift.
Definitely. Depends on circumstances, his goals. Initially, the sources suggest he's mainly out for himself. We hear he seized the kingdom originally with no thought of anyone's gain but his own. He took it because he could, wanted power, riches.
But then you see this shift. Maybe it's just being king, but something changes.
Yeah, the sources note how subtly does the instinct of sovereign responsibility enter even a red barbarian. When the Kothians offer him his life if he'll just give up Aquilonia, he refuses, flat out. Says he would not sell his subjects to the butcher.
So it's not just about the crown anymore.
Seems not. It's about the people under his protection, even though he took that position by force. It's a fascinating shift.
And he shows this leadership capacity in different roles too, right? Leading armies as king, pirate crews.
Yeah, pirate crews like the famous Red Brotherhood. The sources even detail him fighting the old chief Zaporavo one-on-one to win command. Tribal fighters too, the Afghulis in the mountains, the Cossacks on the steppes. His ability to command respect, loyalty from such different groups is pretty key.
And he clearly values that loyalty when he gets it. Believes a chief should never desert his followers. We see that tested when his Afghuli guys desert him after a setback.
Right. And despite that betrayal, he goes back to them, not necessarily out of forgiveness, maybe more out of pure pride, and needing to assert his leadership. He basically says, I'm still chief, I'll prove it. It's a harsh code, but it's his.
So you've got this grounded, practical, incredibly tough barbarian operating in this world that's epic, dangerous. But the element that really ramps up the peril, that makes the Hyborian Age so distinct, is all the sorcery, the ancient evil.
Definitely. He's not just fighting other guys with swords. He's constantly running into forces that just defy natural explanation.
Absolutely. The sources detail this amazing collection of sorcerers, monstrous things. They're integral to the conflicts. One of the big names, a human sorcerer, is Thoth-Amun.
A name that echoes through the whole Hyborian Age, synonymous with dark Stygian magic. But interestingly, the sources first show him when he's really down on his luck, described bitterly as serving as the slave of an outlander.
Sorcerer without his power.
Exactly, and we find out why. He lost his mojo when his super powerful artifact, the Serpent Ring of Set, got stolen. His ambition, though, even powerless, is huge. Ascalante notes it was beside which yours seemed tawdry.
Wow.
All his focus is getting that ring back because he knows once he has it, his power returns, and with it, Stygia's dark influence. Like, a word will be whispered in Stygia, and a wind will creep up from the south by midnight. He's directly tied to Set, the serpent god, embodies that ancient, sinister vibe of Stygia.
And the sources even hinted how he lost it, right? The thief Dion.
Yeah, Dion stumbles across Thoth-Amun and later finds this ring of good fortune. Heavily implied it's the same ring. Sets up Thoth-Amun's inevitable comeback.
That connection, sorcerer and artifact, seems common. Another really detailed encounter in the sources is the Tower of the Elephant in Zamora.
Right. The place itself is mysterious from the start. Conan wonders about the name. Nobody knows its origin. Weird.
He tries to rob it, but not alone. He teams up with Taurus of Numidia, who the sources call the Prince of Thieves. Classic Conan team-up, almost.
Yeah, against the strange backdrop. And the climb itself is nuts. Shows Conan's skill. But then there are dangers right away, like garden lions.
Gator lions.
Yeah. 5 in sight, the text says, makes the climb even more tense.
Okay.
But the real horror is in sight. They find this grotesque spider monster, trailing a web rope, oozing green slime. Conan, typical Conan, defeats it by just chucking a massive missile, some heavy object.
Yep.
Pure strength, using what's there, no magic needed.
And then they reach the inner chamber. The description is so alien. Opulent. Green jade walls, ivory floor, golden ceiling, weird incense.
And there's Yara, white-bearded guy claiming to be the ancient sage Epimetheus, but the real Epimetheus died 1,500 years ago, so red flag right there.
Something's very wrong.
Definitely. And next to Yara is the thing that gives the tower its name, this elephant-like creature, maybe Yag-Kosha. It's blinded, speaks in this strange, stammering voice, and reveals a history that just blows the doors off the Hyborian Age.
How so?
It comes from the green stars. From outside this reality, it saw civilizations rise and fall over unimaginable time. Of Lusia, Atlantis, early Picts, Lemurians. It's this ancient cosmic entity, and Yara trapped it here, imprisoned it in this gem, the heart of the elephant.
Whoa, that's cosmic horror territory.
Exactly. And Conan, instead of fighting it, feels sorry for it. He actually helps the creature get revenge on Yara.
And Yara's death is bizarre.
Totally bizarre and horrifying. He gets pulled, shrinking and screaming, into the gem he used to trap the being. Terrifying, unnatural end, helped along by something fundamentally other.
Okay, switching gears slightly. The sources give us another really unsettling pair. Nabonidus, the Red Priest in Zambula, and his servant Thog.
Right. Nabonidus is presented as way more than just a priest, more than human, a sorcerer who read the minds, pulled strings on which they danced like puppets. He controls the city through fear, manipulation.
And Thog is the physical horror beneath it all. Described as a bulky black object, utterly bestial, black misshapen head, enormous body.
But then there's that chilling detail. Something in the red, murky eyes set it apart from the truly animal, hinting at this dawning intelligence or sentience, calling it a brain and soul, just budding awfully into something vaguely human. It's monstrous power, but with this terrifying potential for something worse than just animal.
Good grief.
And Nabonidus uses this chamber of horror, filled with intoxicating fumes that drive people mad, make them slaughter each other. Conan faces Thog directly, this crimson and black nightmare. He wins, but needs help from Murillo, a local guy. It's a fight against something just grotesque and unnatural.
And sorcery isn't always subtle, is it? It gets used on a big military scale, too, like with Natahak or Natatok, this powerful sorcerer from Shem.
Yeah, he leads this immense horde. Thousands of warriors, plus Stygian troops. The sources say they just covered the desert.
And his power is supernatural, used as a weapon.
Totally. Summons demons to bring elemental chaos. Thunder and wind and fog, fire so hot it consumed the gates of walled cities and burned armored men to bits of charred bone. He even puts this magical mark on Princess Yasmela, calls it a fiend from the abysses tied to her. He's linked to a scarlet crescent symbol. He just represents pure destructive sorcery unleashed on armies, cities.
Then up in the mountains, Conan runs into the Black Seers of Yimcha. ancient sorcerers in this remote fortress, a fantastic pile of stone. Sounds weird itself.
It does. And their leader, the Master of Yumsha, is incredibly old. Claims he was born on the planet long ago, was once a common man, but insists he hasn't lost his human side despite numberless eons of adeptship.
Adeptship.
Right. His power sounds almost reality-bending. Claims all substance is one to him, nothing is immutable, says he can do impossible things like make steel blossoms bloom or flower swords flash. He's like a sorcerer who gets the fundamental fabric of reality and twists it.
And they use necromancy, praising the dead.
Yeah, though the sources say their acolytes have limited resources for it, suggest different power levels, and there's this disturbing crimson conoid cloud thing associated with them, used to snatch Yasmina away. Another example of these weird, maybe extra-dimensional forces they command.
Conan's fight against them sounds brutal.
It is. He ends up using Kemsa's magic girdle, we'll get to him, and just his own physical assault against beings who manipulate reality. Significantly, the master isn't killed, he retreats, suggesting, haven't seen the last of him.
Leaves the door open.
Exactly. And the description of the seer's bodies after death, chilling, twisted and contorted, hands and feet exposed horrifically, like their long lives and power warped them physically too.
The sources also introduce Salome, twin sister of Queen Teramis of Karan, and she's a sorceress, fulfilling this dark prophecy, a witch shall be born.
Her training comes from the east, Kitai, but by a magician who'd been to Stygia, so her black wisdom, her powers of evil, likely have Stygian roots, ancient dark stuff.
And she uses her resemblance to her sister.
To devastating effect, yeah. Betrays Karin, opens the gates to Constantius's Shemite army, but her magic isn't just trickery, she summons this terrifying entity. A black monster described as nature cut out of the heart of night, a black shapelessness, but with distinct eyes and fangs.
Creepy. But it can be heard.
Surprisingly, yeah. It's vulnerable to arrows. Conan leads the returning exiles. They just pepper it with arrows until it collapses dead. It's another example of Howard blending the supernatural with something that can be fought with normal weapons under extreme pressure.
Okay, another island, another ancient being. Coastal Kel on Zaporozhka. Conan's after a magic Yuchi blade there.
Right, near a place called the Copper Throne. Coastal Kel guards it. Not just himself, but with a great serpent, this huge, writhing cable.
Conan kills the serpent, naturally.
Of course, but the sources imply Coastal Kel's power, or maybe his existence, is tied to the place, or the artifact. After the serpent dies, the being considered it ample precaution, almost like the guardian was the main defense, or maybe the being is the place, in a way. Suggests ancient powers aren't always mobile. Sometimes they're bound to locations, objects.
And there are other magical bits and pieces woven through these sources too, right?
Oh yeah. Kemsa, the sorcerer from the Black Seer story, described as a raksha, like a demon or supernatural being from Eastern myths. Maybe not fully human. He uses this jade globe, the globe of Yazud, for mind control. Turns people into zombies, basically. Like walking dead men with glassy eyes.
He had that magic girdle too.
Right, a tangible magic item, protective. But the sources note it works against some spells, not others. Maybe weaker because he was the master slave. Hints at a hierarchy of magic, limitations even for powerful items.
What else? There was that wine.
The golden wine in Zuthal. Incredible stuff. Heals wounds, prolongs life, invigorates you, but it's used by the city's people who are called degenerate, a fast-fading race drowned in lotus streams, living only for sensual joys. So the wine gives physical benefits, but doesn't stop internal decay, stagnation.
Cautionary tale there. And
Yeah,
cursed treasure.
Definitely hinted at. Like in that ghost city guarded by the winged ape, or giant bat thing, the sources mention red clots on the treasure, imply it corrupts or transforms people, like that one pirate who grabs it.
And the Black Lotus Tree. Sounds bad.
Associated with illusions, nightmares, mind-altering stuff. Shows up in stories like Pool of the Black One. And then way up north, you've got ice giants, Atali the Frost Giant's daughter. Primal, elemental threats, luring men to icy deaths. It's just a world saturated with the unnatural. Cosmic beings, cursed items, demigods of ice, everything.
So, how does our pragmatic barbarian actually navigate this world? Full of human plots and cosmic terror, the sources detail all these journeys and conflicts that throw him right into the thick of it.
Let's look at some of the big arcs in your material. First, there's Conan's struggles as King of Aquilonia. Stories like the Phoenix on the Sword, the Scarlet Citadel. He's reached the top of the civilized ladder, but he's anything but safe.
Plots against him start immediately, right? Brutal ones. Ascalante is a key plotter, represents the human threat. Sophisticated rival relies on wits, steel. Initially dismisses Thothamun's magic, actually. A contrast.
Even the court poet, Ronaldo, fights him. Having "wrote me a deathly song" shows how deep the opposition runs. Conan gets wounded by a dagger in one attempt. Shows even a king isn't safe from just a knife in the dark.
And Thotha Moon is lurking there too.
In Phoenix, yeah. Initially fails because he lost his ring, but his presence signals that sorcery is always there, even in palaces. Then in Scarlet Citadel, it's a different threat. Political and magical. He gets captured by Strabonus of Koth and Amalrus of Ophir, part of this Kothian plot to enslave Aquilonia.
And imprisoned in those pits beneath the Scarlet Citadel. Horrible place.
Truly grim. And this is a defining moment. They offer him freedom if he'll just yield his kingdom. But his stubborn manhood revolted at the thought. He flat out refuses. That sense of responsibility we talked about, it outweighs his own survival instinct. Big character moment.
His escape is rough. Aided by Natala and those weird Zuthal people.
Yeah, Zuthal. That fast-fading race, drowned in lotus dreams, living for sensual joys, using that golden wine. Escaping Zuthal itself, through some hidden window the sources mention, shows his resourcefulness even surrounded by that decay.
Okay, away from the throne, Conan is maybe most famous as a pirate, right? The sources cover this well. Queen of the Black Coast, the Black Stranger, Pool of the Black One. He sails with Bali.
The legendary Queen of the Black Coast, fierce, commands the Black Corsairs, these Shemite pirates.
And these voyages take him to some strange, dangerous places, like that cursed city.
A ghost of a city. Haunting descriptions, weeds, broken piers, buckling towers, this creepy silence, decay.
And the treasure there is guarded by something monstrous.
And a winged ape, yeah. Or maybe a giant bat or bird. The text is a bit ambiguous. And the treasure itself is tainted. Those red clots mentioned implies a curse, a corrupting effect. You see it in how one pirate reacts to it.
Beli's end is tragic. Her funeral pyre.
Yeah, the sources mingle a bit between Queen and Pool here, but the image is powerful. Her figure, lapped in scarlet on the shining pyre, really sticks with you.
And Conan doesn't just sail with pirates. He becomes a chief himself. Leads the Red Brotherhood.
Right. The sources explicitly say he challenges and beats Zaporavo, the old leader, in combat to take charge. Might makes right again, even among thieves.
The pirate stories also have him fighting supernatural stuff directly. Giants.
Yeah, giants on an island in Pool of the Black One. They escape on a ship called the Wastrel. Later, sailing to Kush with Tito, he fights these black giants, armored and tough, but vulnerable to arrows from Beli's warriors, or maybe her former crew.
And there's that weird bit where he might encounter Belit again. Or her ghost.
Yeah, in Pool, it's ambiguous, blurs the line between life and beyond. Her description in these sections is great, though. Fierce and hard as a gray wolf, eyes never dimmed by city lights, contrasting her wildness with civilization.
Okay, moving from sea to mountains. The people of the Black Circle. Mountain intrigues. Conan gets involved with Devi Yasmina.
A princess seeking his help for her dying brother. Seems like sorceries involved poison, or maybe his soul's being drained.
And this leads him into conflict with Kemsa, that Raksha sorcerer.
Right. Kemsa's trying to kidnap Yasmina for Karim Shah, a Turanian agent wanting her kingdom. Leads to this desperate chase through the mountains. Includes that memorable bit where Conan gives captured clothes to a naked Galdsai girl they find. Rough kindness.
Yasmina gets captured anyway, taken to the Black Seers.
Which forces Conan into this unlikely alliance with Karim Shah. Pure pragmatism. We both want the Devi, Karim says. Different reasons. Obviously, Karim wants her kingdom. Conan initially wants ransom, plunder. But that responsibility thing creeps in again.
So together, they attack Yimsha, navigating its weird architecture.
Yeah, that slanted ramp, the mist-filled chasm, figures seen like they're under deep water. Bizarre. They beat the Seers, Master escapes. Conan uses Kemsa's magic girdle here. Rare for him to use magic tools directly. Probably necessity.
And after the fight, he goes back to his F-Ghuli followers. The ones who deserted him.
He does. Pivotal moment. Despite the betrayal, he decides to lead them against the Turanians. Proves he's still chief. Reinforces his code. Yasmina, meanwhile, shows her own strength, leaves to raise her own army. Defiant.
The sources also have simpler, but just as intense, stories of pure escape.
Definitely. Escaping Nabonidus and Thog and Zambula with Murillo. Navigating traps, decay.
And escaping Khosrow-Khel and his snake on Zaporozhka Island with Octavia.
Right. Octavia, the king's daughter, fleeing slavery. Her journey's interesting. Starts terrified, fragile. But the sources show her growing resilience. Tries to fight with Conan, follows him faithfully, recovers her poise later, even scorns the rough Cossacks they meet. These moments show Conan's not just a fighter, but a survivor, capable of protecting others too.
So across all these stories, you get this huge cast of characters interacting with Conan. Allies, rivals.
A really diverse group. Allies like Taurus the Thief, Murillo, Natala, Octavia, Sancha, Devi Yasmina. sometimes even Kirim Shah when it suits them both. He commands loyalty from groups like the Afghulis, Black Corsairs, Zingarans.
And his rivals are just as varied. Ascalante plotting against King Conan, Amalric and Strabonus, Zaporov as a pirate, Constantius invading Kara, Arasal, sometimes Kirim Shah again. And then, of course, that whole long list of sorcerers and supernatural beings. Threats on a totally different level.
And the dynamic that creates is this constant contrast. Conan's raw barbarian nature versus all these varied people. Refined nobles, decadent city dwellers like in Zuthal, fierce tribesmen, and then these utterly alien magical beings. He moves among them all, never quite belonging. His simple, practical view always clashing with their complex societies, arcane knowledge, or unnatural lives.
He's like the fundamental human element reacting to a world that's often fundamentally unnatural. Or maybe has forgotten its own natural roots.
Which brings us to the bigger themes, the takeaways from these sources. One really striking thing is just the constant danger. It is not a safe world. The sources hammer this home. Nameless unrest throughout the kingdom, even when things seem calm. Stealthy feet padding in the darkness, a sense that every shadow seemed to hide a lurking assassin. Life's cheap. Dangers everywhere. Humans, beasts, environment, magic.
And there's that strong theme of appearances versus reality. Things are rarely what they seem. Rinaldo, the poet's songs about the king live forever, but the king's actual struggles are forgotten.
The beautiful Thalis in Zuthal is cruel, aligned with the monster Thog. The red priest Nabonidus, with his religious front, hides something bestial. Civilization often masks decay, corruption, hidden horror.
The power of the ancient past, too. That feels huge.
Dominant theme. Civilizations rise, fall, crumble, but their ruins, curses, artifacts, they linger, they impact the present, hold dark power, creates this sense of deep time, cyclic change that dwarfs the kingdom's ambitions.
And the sources really explore what strength is, don't they? It's not just muscles.
No, definitely not. Conan has the physical might, sure, but true strength here includes instinct, sheer will, amazing adaptability, and crucially, defiance. Defiance against overwhelming odds, even cosmic ones. Conan fighting alone, refusing to sell his kingdom. That's the deeper strength.
The sources also seem to show a role for just chance, fate, random circumstance.
Yeah, it plays a noticeable part. Small things have huge consequences. Dion the thief's nervousness leading him to Thoth Amun's weakness, finding that hidden window in Zuthal. Conan often ends up in key spots, not through grand plans, but through his actions mixed with sheer happenstance.
Which brings us back to Conan's unique position. This raw barbarian navigating complex, often decadent civilizations, facing down arcane, supernatural threats. He's unbound by their rules, their fears, their rigid beliefs.
Exactly. He approaches fighting humans and fighting magic with the same stark practicality, matter-of-factly, as the sources put it.
He doesn't get lost in the theory of magic, like the existential dread of cosmic beings. He sees a threat, he deals with it. Strength, steel, animal cunning, that simplicity, that lack of awe or paralysis when facing the incomprehensible. Maybe that's his biggest advantage. It lets him survive, even win, where others might just freeze.
He really is like a force of nature, this primal man cutting through a world saturated with the unnatural, a world that's maybe lost touch with fundamental reality.
Well, we have definitely journeyed through some treacherous cities, explored ancient, cursed ruins, and traversed some wild, dangerous frontiers, all guided by the stack of sources you brought us. We've seen Conan face down plots by ambitious men, fight terrifying, grotesque monsters, and confront sorcerers wielding powers that seem to just unravel reality itself.
What really stands out from these sources, I think, is that portrayal of a world where savagery and civilization are constantly rubbing against each other, often violently, and where the dark echoes, the artifacts of lost ages, hold this immense, often malevolent power.
And Conan, the Cimmerian barbarian, he doesn't just survive it. He thrives. And not just because he's strong, but because of that adaptability, that fundamental defiance, and that stark, unromantic, almost contemptuous view of the world. Its societies, its magic, even its gods.
He is the unyielding, fundamentally human force moving through this constantly shifting, often horrifying landscape of the Hyborian Age. Yeah.
So here is a final thought drawn from these sources for you to consider. In a world like the Hyborian Age, where even, ancient adepts from the Green Stars can be beaten or trapped, and where shining kingdoms rise only to eventually crumble into forgotten ruin, what truly constitutes lasting power or meaningful knowledge?
And could it be that a savage like Conan, with his pragmatic nature, his direct, unclouded view of reality, does he fundamentally understand the nature of existence? The brutal, transient reality of power and life may be better than those lost in luxury or politics or arcane, often self-deceptive study.
Something to chew on. That's all for this deep dive.